Hey guys, in this video we're going to be talking about the Belgian Model 1935 Mauser, the brand new Mauser rifle for the Belgian Army that was made just in time for World War II. Now as usual, before we get into the specific history of this rifle, we need to go back in time a little bit, and this time it's actually not that far. We're just going to go back to the early 1930s in Belgium. So at the time Belgium was using the pretty old, long in the tooth, the Mauser model of 1989, which was a single stack magazine and the 7.65 by 53 cartridge. A lot of people call that the 7.65 Argentine, but really Belgium was the first country to adopt that, so it really should be called 7.65 Belgian probably. But that's the rifle that the Belgian Army was using through World War I up until World War II. Now obviously the Belgians, kind of seeing the writing on the wall in the early 1930s, they need to adopt a new modernized rifle for their infantry forces. Hitler takes power in 1933 and kind of really kicks off this push in Belgium for a new updated rifle. Now there's a bit of back and forth with Belgian politics at the time, kind of trying to decide what they wanted to do. Some politics wanted the government arsenal at MAE to just create a whole brand new rifle from scratch and just be the ones to make it. Others wanted FN to make the rifles because FN at the time was a well-established, maker of Mauser rifles. Their Mauser model of 1930 by FN was, pretty widespread in the world and was a very great high-quality Mauser rifle. And they were also could make them really fast. So some politicians wanted just no brand new rifles and to only make conversions from their captured surplus stock of German Mausers. And so at the time, Belgium had tens of thousands of German Gewehr 98s from World War I in their inventories and storage. So some people just wanted to do those because we have the Great Depression going on, budgets are tight and everything, and it would be cheaper just to do that. Well, a sort of compromise was reached, and what ended up happening was MAE was able to design a new rifle, but they were going to use parts, or as many parts as possible, from their Gewehr 98s, so like the receivers and such, to make the new model 1935. So big surprise, manufacturing of the 1935 Mauser started in 1935 at the MAE arsenal. They were converting or taking parts from their old German Gewehr 98s and essentially kind of making parts kits out of them and then using these parts in the new 1935s. They were scrubbing the receivers, they were putting the MAE arsenal markings on the receivers, manufacturing their own parts, and also they were contracting parts from FN to be used in the 1935 rifles and sort of assembling these from these German parts kits. Now at the same time, MAE was also converting their older 1889 long rifles to this new 1935 pattern, and that rifle is called the 1889/36. I actually did a video on that one already if you want to watch that after this one. But essentially, they're doing both. They're converting the old rifles to the new 1935 standard, and they're also taking German rifles and converting them. So it's just going pretty slowly. Now, September 1st, 1939, when Germany invaded Poland, that was a big kind of wake-up call to the whole world pretty much, and to Belgium, that they needed to step up their production of their 1935 rifles. They need as many rifles as possible. Obviously the Germans have, bad intentions. They're invading other countries. And Belgium remembers World War I, and they need rifles to defend themselves. So they go ahead and just say, screw the expense. We're going to contract with FN to start making these 1935 rifles. And it was around January of 1940 when FN actually started making their brand new 1935 rifles from brand new components, from scratch. And that's actually what this one is here. So these brand new sort of 1935s that were made at FN, starting in January 1940. Now, May 10th, 1940 is when the Germans invaded. Now, production starting in January 1940 and only lasting until May 1940 after the German invasion and capture of the FN factory. It's, less than 3 months that these FN model of 1935s were actually made. There's a very last-minute production, and it was kind of odd. So these FN 1935s, there were MAE government inspectors at FN that were sort of inspecting and testing these pieces and accepting them into these FN rifles. And these rifles weren't actually accepted in the military straight from FN. these FN 1935s were shipped to MAE, where they were inspected, tested, and then accepted. So any of these FN rifles that have the cartouches, the little acceptance cartouches on the stock, that was done at the MAE government arsenal. So it's a pretty inefficient system all in all. It just seemed like there was a lot of bureaucracy and stuff like that involved in their Mauser production. So they didn't actually produce a lot of these. It was, the MAE produced about 60,000 in these like 4 years up until the German invasion. And then FN made about 10,000 in, it's like 129 days that FN was actually making these up until they were captured. So with those production numbers, you can kind of do some math and see. So MAE producing 60,000 rifles, we're just going to estimate that it was about 1,800 days they were producing these 1935s. And that comes out to an average of only 33 rifles per day that were manufactured at MAE, or made from parts kits at MAE. Whereas FN making 10,000 rifles in 129 days, that's 77 rifles per day. So FN, even though they're making them from scratch and everything, are making these way, way faster than the MAE arsenal. Kind of an interesting thought experiment is, what if FN got the contract from the very beginning to make these rifles, and they made them at that speed the whole time? So, say if FN made 77 rifles per day for 1,800 days, that would be 138,600 rifles, possibly, that FN could have made, from 1935 up until the German invasion. So, that's a little over double the production of MAE. So that would have probably been the smart choice. But of course, in 1935, maybe they weren't really sure if they were going to get invaded and everything, and they're trying to save costs there. But just kind of an interesting comparison between, private Mauser production versus like a government arsenal production. So with the FN 1935 rifles that were captured at FN, because those guns were sort of inspected and accepted at MAE, the ones captured at FN will not have any of these acceptance marks. I'll show you this up close a little bit later. They won't have any of these acceptance markings on the stock. They'll just kind of be in plain condition. So that's sort of the telltale sign if it was captured at FN or not, the one you're looking at, as long as the stock wasn't, like sanded or something. But that's sort of the thing. So the FN 1935s that were captured by the Germans, they don't have like German markings on them. They don't have a Waffen on them, because of the fact there wasn't a Waffen sort of inspection set up at FN at that time. You see that with like the VZ38 pistols. Those don't have any Waffen on them, even though they were used by the Germans. It's sort of a misconception that the Germans marked every single thing that they captured. So that's just kind of something to know about these guns and kind of other guns that the Germans captured in general. Now let's get in and do some close-ups, and I'll show you some of the interesting details about this rifle. Now here on top is the 1935, and on bottom is the FN 1930. So there are quite a bit of improvements to the 1935 over the 1930. One of them is with this top handguard design on the 1930. This handguard is actually held on by a spring clip that's underneath the top handguard right here. So the handguard being held on here, it was very easy to break or crack this handguard whenever you were taking it off the rifle, because very often soldiers would just grab it by the top here and lift it and pry it. That would both break it here where the screw is if the screw wasn't unscrewed. It would also just put a little bit too much strain and pressure on the wood screws that held the clip into this top handguard. The wood is just too thin and brittle for this attachment method. So with the 1935, they didn't do that. They went away pretty completely with this, the older handguard style, and went to this kind of more German style where the handguard is just forward to the rear sight and it extends just barely past this rear barrel band. This still allows you to grab the barrel here, without burning your hands if it was hot. I kind of like this style over this older 1930 quite a bit, and it was obviously an improvement to the Belgians. Now another improvement with the 1935 is with this sling swivel. So here we have on the 1930, it's just a pretty simple sling swivel that's sort of pressed into this barrel band here. This can be prone to sort of wearing out, and there's kind of a lot of friction with this design. Also, it's only a single hinge. So with the 1935, it swings on a screw which can be tightened and loosened, And there's actually a double hinge in here. So the whole sling swivel can be brought out and then bent forward just slightly. With these two hinges, it just articulates much better and is much less prone to wearing out or anything. The front sight on the 1935, personally, I love these strong, robust front sight protectors that are built into the guns. This was a pretty big improvement in my eyes, and obviously to the Belgians as well. So the 1930 series, it relied on these, removable front sight protectors, for using the rifle. But once you want to actually shoot it and you take this off, you just have an unprotected front sight blade. So if the rifle is dropped or anything on the front sight, you can essentially lose or damage your front sight, where this is definitely protected on this 1935 rifle here. The front sight is nestled safely within these two large wings or ears sticking up. Now you might think this is a sling swivel, but no, this is not. This is a stacking swivel. It's very similar to, say, what's on like the M1917. And they switched to this because, traditionally you would use the cleaning rods to put your rifle into, one of the little stand-up teepees. But with this sort of cleaning rod attachment method, the cleaning rod is tucked up close to the barrel. It doesn't extend outwards enough to be stacked, so you need this extra little stacking swivel in order to stack your rifles together, where on the earlier guns you could do that. Now the whole front band bayonet attachment area is highly reinforced on the model 1935. It's thought they did this because there was actually a bayonet attachment for the 1935s, where the 1935 rifle itself would sort of act like a monopod for a BAR rifle. So they needed this extra strong. So this is actually a hinged front band. It's held on by a screw right here. Very, very similar to, say, like a Car 98 hinged front band. So you just unscrew the screw, take it out, and it opens up and slides off. This is a very robust, bayonet and front band locking system on the rifle. Again, it's thought this was just for that, to be extra strong for the rifle monopod system for the machine gun. And the cleaning rods on the 1935s, these are pretty much just a straight copy of the earlier 1889 style of cleaning rod. So here's an up-close shot of the receiver ring on the 1935. So on the FN production 1935s, you're going to see a big crown L on these receivers. That's for King Leopold III. And then on the side rail here, there is the kind of typical FN maker's markings here. On the MAE production 1935s, you won't see this crown. Instead, you'll just see, manufactured armas de l'État or whatever. I don't speak dead languages, but you'll just see the MAE markings at the top of the receiver on the MAE production guns. So that kind of makes these FN produced 1935s, I guess, a little more pretty. I definitely prefer this one to the MAE production. The bolts are left in the white, where the receivers and all of their components. This is not bluing. This is in fact it's a black enamel paint. It's kind of interesting. I really only am sure of maybe like the French doing this, other than the Belgians. But so all these parts were phosphate coated and then painted over on top of that, because the paint sticks very nice to the phosphate coating. And the phosphate coating sticks pretty nicely to the metal components. So this is a really nice sort of high corrosion resistant finish applied to the 1935s here. Definitely a really nice finish. Here with the top sight, we can see that it goes all the way down to 100 meters. Very nice. It's very modern. It only seems like a handful of Mauser rifles in the 1930s kind of went all the way down to 100 meters. So that's definitely a pro. These are pretty nice sights, for barleycorn style sights at least. So there's only a handful of sort of serial numbers on the 1935. We have the serial number markings on the receiver. We have it on the barrel. It's here on the bolt handle. And then down here, it's on the stock. So these are pretty much the only four major components on this rifle that are serial numbered. You can tell this one just happens to be an all-matching example, but those are the four numbers that you'll want to check on yours if you're trying to see if it's a number-matching rifle. no numbers down here on, say, typical other German Mauser rifles or anything like that. So trying to get nice and up close here for this stock cartouche. This is the actual sort of military acceptance mark that was stamped on these stocks. The French kind of did this the same way on their rifles, and that's what the Belgians did. So down here at the bottom you see 1940, that's for the acceptance year, and then up at the top is the initials of the inspector, or the person that accepted it. And then right in the middle, you can see that crown L, the same crown L that's on the receiver for King Leopold III. Here's a nice up close of that crown L on the receiver. Just a beautiful receiver marking really on these rifles. And then you can see various acceptance markings on the barrel and the receiver. Those FN markings. Just a really nicely built and highly detailed rifle. Another factor with the 1935 rifles is that it's meant to accept this regular 7.65 ammo and the old 1889 style of clips. So this is the old sort of square stripper clip guide where the ejector box arm kind of swings over to help hold the stripper clips into the guide here. This is kind of the most sort of antiquated part of this whole system, but it's really just had to be on it just to kind of keep ammo and clip compatibility. Now this barrel band here is actually hinged at the top, and because it's hinged, it tends to stick up a little bit more. So on these FN made 1935s, on the wood here, it's got this little ridge that was kind of cut into the wood here, and that was just to be raised up to be level with the hinge on the rear band so that it kind of prevents snagging of that. On the MAE manufactured 1935s, you don't see this little ridge or a little bump on the top handguard, and this kind of sticks up a little bit more, but that's just kind of another little tiny detail FN added to their production of these rifles just to kind of make the rifles a little bit more streamlined. Now the action on the Belgian 1935 it's essentially exactly a German 1898 style. You have the large receiver ring, nice vent shroud around the cocking piece here and everything. This is pretty much identical to, say, like a German Gewehr 98 or something like that. It's a really great solid action, and it's a good choice obviously for the Belgians to pick this action. Now here on top is a K98K, and you can see with the 1935 the barrels are exactly the same. They're both 600 millimeter barrel lengths, which is about 24 inches. There's kind of a lot of similarities between the K98K and the 1935. It's possible that the precursor to the K98K, the standard model, kind of had some influence on the 1935 production with the straight bolt handle, top handguard placement, or maybe just the previous Gewehr 98 kind of handguard style and stuff kind of influenced the 1935 Belgian rifle. But otherwise, it's just, this 1935 is very nice, and it has some kind of bonus features over the K98K. It would just be a little bit better if these all had side slings and kind of a turned down bolt handles. Kind of really the only things I think that could improve the 1935. Now, even though the impact of the Belgian 1935 was very minimal, they're still a neat part of military and World War II history. They're kind of a cool, underrated Mauser rifle that a lot of people really don't even know about. Part of that's because just not a lot of these rifles are out there. It's pretty hard to find Belgian 1935s. Most of them that you're going to find are going to be the MAEs and not this FN made rifle. So kind of combination of sort of being from Belgium. Not a lot of people collect Belgian stuff. Not a lot of them exist. Not a lot of people know about it and stuff like that. So you can kind of look up and come across one of these, as like a little hidden gem maybe somewhere. So I'd definitely suggest keeping an eye out for these. They're definitely fun. They're good shooters. Great high quality, Mauser rifles with some pretty neat, albeit limited World War II history. But it's definitely a good rifle for any sort of World War II Mauser collection. So now if you're interested, the book about Mauser FN rifles is FN Mauser Rifles by Anthony van der Linden. It's a really good book. I highly recommend this. It goes over pretty much all of the Belgian rifles from the 1889 up till the 1935. It goes over the contracts, both pre and post World War II FN contracts. So this is a good book. I highly recommend it. It's not that expensive right now. I think it's still in print, so I recommend picking this up before it goes out of print like a lot of other firearm books do. In case you're wondering, this is poison ivy. Apparently I'm pretty allergic to this Missouri poison ivy up here, so that's what that is. But thanks so much for watching, everybody. I appreciate you tuning in, and I'll see you next time.